Welcome to Hollywood Secrets Information. In this video, we are going to uncover the darker side of old Hollywood and revisit 10 actresses who became unforgettable for playing some of cinema's most manipulative, ruthless, dangerous, and downright terrifying characters. From cold-hearted murderers and seductive schemers to jealous rivals and calculating villains, these women prove that sometimes the most frightening character in a movie isn't hiding in the shadows. She's standing right in front of you with a smile. So get comfortable, because we're counting down 10 of the most memorable, evil actresses and villainous performances of old Hollywood. 10. Remick. Remick became one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, but behind her elegant appearance was an incredible ability to portray characters with deeply disturbing sides. She wasn't simply an actress who played villains. She could make audiences question whether a seemingly ordinary person might be capable of something terrible. One of her most memorable dark performances came in the psychological thriller The Omen, where she played Catherine Thorne, the adoptive mother of a mysterious young boy named Damien. At first, Catherine appears to be a loving mother caught in an increasingly frightening situation. But as strange events begin unfolding around her family, the atmosphere becomes darker and more disturbing. What made Remick's performance so effective was her vulnerability. She didn't play the character like a traditional villain. Instead, she made the audience feel the fear and confusion of a mother who slowly realizes that something is terribly wrong. Her performance demonstrated an important lesson about horror. Sometimes the most frightening characters aren't the ones committing evil acts. They're the innocent people trapped beside them. Although Remick herself was certainly not an evil person, her ability to bring fear, psychological tension, and emotional intensity to the screen earned her a place among actresses remembered for darker cinematic roles. Her performances remain proof that a calm face and elegant presence can sometimes be far more unsettling than obvious villainy. 9. Bette Davis. Few actresses in classic Hollywood could portray cruelty, manipulation, and emotional instability quite like Bette Davis. With her unforgettable eyes, powerful voice, and commanding screen presence, Davis could transform even the most complicated character into someone audiences couldn't ignore. One of her most famous dark roles was Baby Jane Hudson in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. The character is a former child performer whose fame has disappeared, leaving behind bitterness, jealousy, and resentment toward her sister Blanche. As the story develops, Baby Jane's behavior becomes increasingly cruel and disturbing. What makes the performance so memorable is that Davis doesn't portray Jane as a simple monster. Instead, she reveals a deeply damaged woman trapped inside her own obsession with the past. Her jealousy toward Blanche becomes a destructive force, and the once famous performer becomes increasingly detached from reality. Davis's performance was so intense that audiences could almost forget they were watching an actress. Her facial expressions, mannerisms, and increasingly unstable behavior created one of classic cinema's most recognizable psychological villains. Yet the real brilliance of Bette Davis was her ability to make complicated characters fascinating. She could be terrifying without needing supernatural powers or elaborate special effects. Sometimes all she needed was a look, a sentence, or a smile. Baby Jane became one of her signature performances and helped establish Davis as one of the greatest actresses capable of portraying the darkest corners of human behavior. 8. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of the biggest stars of Hollywood's golden age, celebrated for her determination, glamour, and powerful performances. But she also became associated with some unforgettable dark characters. One of her most fascinating roles came in Mildred Pierce, where she portrayed a mother whose ambition and devotion to her daughter gradually become sources of conflict. Mildred isn't a conventional villain, but her complicated relationship with her daughter Veda reveals another type of darkness, the destructive power of obsession, pride, and emotional manipulation. Crawford's performance works because she makes Mildred both sympathetic and deeply flawed. Audiences can understand her desire to provide a better life for her family, yet they can also see how that devotion allows others to take advantage of her. Crawford's screen presence gave the character tremendous strength. She could appear glamorous and confident one moment and emotionally devastated the next. Her career later became connected with even darker cinematic imagery, particularly through roles that emphasized psychological tension and complicated family relationships. What made Crawford so compelling was that she rarely played characters who were simply good or bad. Instead, she explored people driven by ambition, jealousy, fear, and desperation. That complexity made her performances powerful and sometimes unsettling. Joan Crawford remains one of old Hollywood's most fascinating stars because she understood something important about dramatic storytelling. The most memorable characters are often the ones whose actions make us uncomfortable while still allowing us to understand what drives them. 7. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck possessed one of the most commanding personalities in classic Hollywood, and few films demonstrated her ability to play a dangerous character better than Double Indemnity. As Phyllis Dietrichson, Stanwyck became one of film noir's defining figures. Phyllis is intelligent, calculating, and extremely manipulative. She approaches insurance salesman Walter Neff with an apparently innocent request, but it soon becomes clear that something much darker is happening beneath the surface. Her plan involves murder and insurance fraud, and she carefully uses charm and deception to draw Walter into her scheme. Stanwyck's performance became iconic because she didn't need to shout or behave dramatically to appear dangerous. Instead, she used controlled expressions, carefully chosen words, and an almost effortless confidence. Her character represented one of film noir's most famous archetypes, the femme fatale, a woman whose beauty and intelligence can become weapons. Phyllis doesn't rely on physical strength. Her power comes from understanding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. Stanwyck's performance helped define the image of the dangerous femme fatale for generations of filmmakers. Even decades later, Phyllis remains one of the most recognizable female villains in American cinema. Barbara Stanwyck herself was admired as an exceptionally talented professional, but her performance in Double Indemnity showed just how convincing she could be when playing a character whose charm concealed deadly intentions. 6. Gloria Grahame. Gloria Grahame became one of film noir's most memorable actresses, and her performances often carried an atmosphere of mystery, danger, and emotional uncertainty. In The Big Heat, she played Debbie Marsh, a nightclub hostess caught in a violent world of corruption and crime. Although Debbie isn't a conventional villain, Graham's association with noir helped establish her as an actress capable of inhabiting morally complicated worlds. Her characters often seem to exist between innocence and darkness, making audiences unsure of what they might do next. Graham's distinctive appearance and restrained acting style made her especially effective in stories filled with betrayal and deception. Unlike traditional Hollywood heroines, her characters could be unpredictable and emotionally complicated. This quality made her a perfect fit for film noir, a genre where almost nobody could be completely trusted. Her performances demonstrated that a character doesn't have to be an outright murderer to create a sense of danger. Sometimes the uncertainty itself is enough. Gloria Grahame's career also reflected the changing nature of Hollywood, moving between glamorous productions, crime dramas, and psychologically darker stories. Today, she remains particularly remembered by classic film fans for her noir performances and her ability to make morally complicated characters feel authentic. Her legacy demonstrates why old Hollywood's darkest female characters remain so fascinating. They were rarely simple villains. They were intelligent, emotional, flawed, and sometimes impossible to predict. 5. Angela Lansbury. Before becoming famous to later generations for her television work, Angela Lansbury established herself as an extraordinary film actress capable of playing characters far older and darker than her real age. One of her most famous villainous performances came in The Manchurian Candidate, where she portrayed Mrs. Iselin, a politically ambitious and manipulative mother. Her performance was chilling because her character's evil is largely psychological. Mrs. Iselin doesn't need to physically attack anyone to appear threatening. Instead, she uses influence, manipulation, and political ambition to control the people around her. Lansbury's calm and intelligent delivery made the character especially disturbing. She appeared sophisticated and respectable on the outside, while concealing extremely sinister intentions. The role earned Lansbury an Academy Award nomination and became one of the most celebrated villainous performances in American cinema. What made it remarkable was the contrast between Lansbury's elegant appearance and the horrifying nature of her character's actions. She demonstrated that evil in movies doesn't always have to look frightening. Sometimes it can wear an expensive dress, speak politely, and appear completely respectable. Angela Lansbury went on to enjoy an extraordinary career across film, television, and theater, but Mrs. Iselin remains one of the strongest examples of her dramatic range. Her performance proved that psychological manipulation can be more frightening than physical violence, and her character remains one of classic Hollywood's most memorable female antagonists. 4. And Savage. And Savage became particularly famous for her role as Vera in the film noir classic Detour. Vera is one of the most memorable dangerous women in low-budget film noir, and Savage's performance helped make the movie a cult classic. Vera encounters the troubled protagonist Al Roberts and quickly realizes that she can exploit his vulnerable situation. Instead of offering genuine help, she uses threats, manipulation, and blackmail to control him. Savage's performance is intense because Vera seems to understand exactly how much power she has over the desperate man in front of her. She doesn't need an army or elaborate resources. Her weapon is psychological pressure. The character's unpredictable behavior creates a constant sense of danger, making audiences wonder what she will do next. Detour was made on a limited budget, but in Savage's performance gave the film an energy that continues to attract classic film enthusiasts. Vera became a perfect example of the film noir femme fatale, not necessarily glamorous in the traditional Hollywood sense, but dangerous because she understands human weakness. Savage's portrayal is particularly effective because she refuses to soften the character. Vera is aggressive, manipulative, and opportunistic, and Savage commits completely to the role. Her performance became a defining part of the film's legacy and demonstrated how a relatively small production could create an unforgettable villain through atmosphere, writing, and a powerful performance. 3. Louise Fletcher. Louise Fletcher's most iconic villainous performance technically belongs to a later era of Hollywood, but her portrayal of Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest became one of the defining examples of a seemingly calm woman exercising terrifying authority. Nurse Ratched doesn't behave like a traditional movie villain. She rarely loses control, rarely raises her voice, and rarely needs physical force. Instead, she uses rules, institutional power, and psychological pressure to control the patients under her care. That calmness makes her frightening. Louise Fletcher understood that the character's greatest weapon was appearing reasonable. She could deliver a cruel decision in the same calm tone someone might use to discuss the weather. This contrast between politeness and control made Nurse Ratched unforgettable. Fletcher's performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress and transformed the character into a cultural symbol of authoritarian behavior. What makes the performance particularly powerful is that viewers can see how the character's control gradually affects the people around her. She represents a kind of evil that doesn't need obvious violence. It comes through humiliation, intimidation, and the abuse of authority. Although Fletcher belonged to a generation slightly beyond what is traditionally called Old Hollywood, Her performance deserves recognition whenever cinema's most memorable female antagonists are discussed. Nurse Ratched remains one of the clearest examples of how an actress can create fear simply through restraint, silence, and absolute control. 2. Joan Blondell. Joan Blondell was one of Hollywood's most recognizable actresses, appearing in numerous films during the Golden Age. While she was often known for energetic, witty, and sympathetic characters, her career also included roles that demonstrated her darker dramatic abilities. Blondell's greatest strength was her ability to portray realistic people rather than exaggerated caricatures. When placed in morally questionable situations, she could make a character feel believable and complicated. Her performances often reflected the harsher side of Depression-era and pre-war America, where survival sometimes required manipulation, deception, and difficult choices. This made her particularly effective in crime dramas and stories involving troubled relationships. Blondell's screen personality could shift rapidly, from warm and humorous to sharp and intimidating, making her characters unpredictable. Although she is not traditionally ranked among Hollywood's greatest villains, she represents an important part of the era's darker female characters. Women who weren't necessarily evil from the beginning, but were shaped by ambition, desperation, or difficult circumstances. That distinction is important when looking at classic Hollywood. Many memorable antagonists were not supernatural monsters or cartoon villains. They were ordinary people who made increasingly destructive decisions. Joan Blondell's long career demonstrated remarkable versatility, and her ability to move between comedy, drama, crime stories, and darker material helped establish her as one of the most adaptable actresses of her generation. 1. Barbara Stanwyck, the queen of the Femme Fatale. And at number 1, we return to one of the most powerful names in classic Hollywood, Barbara Stanwyck. While she played countless heroic and sympathetic characters, her portrayal of Phyllis Dietrichson in Double Indemnity remains one of the greatest examples of a female villain in Hollywood history. Phyllis doesn't look like a traditional criminal. She appears elegant, confident, and sophisticated. But underneath that appearance is a carefully calculated plan involving murder and deception. She understands exactly how to manipulate Walter Neff, recognizing his weaknesses and turning his attraction toward her into a weapon. What makes Stanwyck's performance so unforgettable is the subtlety. She doesn't need exaggerated expressions or dramatic speeches. Her power comes from control. Every conversation feels like a psychological chess match. The audience knows that something is wrong, but Phyllis remains composed almost throughout the entire story. This is what made the classic film noir Femme Fatale so powerful. She could turn charm into danger and trust into betrayal. Stanwyck's performance became an important part of cinema history and influenced generations of crime films and television dramas. Yet her career was far greater than a single villainous role. She was an extraordinarily versatile actress who successfully played comedy, drama, romance, westerns, and serious character roles. Her place at number 1 isn't because she was personally evil, but because she created one of the most iconic, dangerous women ever seen on screen. Phyllis Dietrichson remains the perfect example of Hollywood's ability to make danger look elegant. And there you have it, 10 unforgettable actresses whose performances brought some of old Hollywood's darkest, most manipulative, and most dangerous characters to life. From the calculating femme fatale to the psychologically terrifying antagonist, these performances prove that some of cinema's most frightening villains don't need monsters, weapons, or supernatural powers. Sometimes, all they need is intelligence, confidence, and the ability to manipulate everyone around them. But now we want to hear from you. Which actress or character do you think delivered the most unforgettable villainous performance? And which classic Hollywood actress should have made our list? If you enjoyed this journey into the darker side of Hollywood history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Hollywood Secrets Information, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next fascinating countdown. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next Hollywood Secrets information video.